These are my week 4 predictions for the 2022 NFL season. Not going to waste too much time. We're going to get right into the video. If you guys aren't new and you want to see some more videos like this, please be sure to leave a like, subscribe to the channel if you haven't already. And with that said, let's get right into it. Now, one game I don't even have to cover because it happened last night, and it was 3 hours of my life that I wish I could take back. Colts versus Broncos game. I expected the Colts to win this game relatively easily. I thought their offense was starting to mesh a little bit, and even though they did lose Javonte Williams and did not have Randy Gregory, I did think that they could have toppled the Colts, who are now missing Jonathan Taylor and Shaq Leonard. But instead, I watched the worst professional football game I've ever seen in my life. It felt like I was watching two glorified USFL teams play. Actually, no, I think the USFL has had better football than this, and it's not even close. Colts defeated the Broncos 12-9, and I was absolutely right about that fucking terrorist Nathaniel Hackett. But it looks like he's not alone in his madness. Russell Wilson from the second half of the season decided to show up in the first half of the entire season, so who knows, maybe he'll turn around. I doubt it, though. And he decided to fuck me and my fantasy team sideways. All right, we're moving on now to the London game. It's Giants versus Packers. I do have Packers over Giants, and here's why. It's about all the 3-1 teams. Giants have been probably the biggest surprise in the NFL so far, obtaining a record of over 500 with Daniel Jones as a quarterback. Team's new head coach Brian Daboll has done a decent job turning chicken shit into chicken salad. Granted, they've beaten some lackluster teams. They got this record: Titans, Panthers, and Bears. But most people didn't expect them to get even 2 or 4 wins this season. Another notable part of the season for the Giants has been the resurgence of Saquon Barkley. He currently leads the NFL in total rush yards as well as rushing yards per game. The Packers, however, even without Devontae Adams or consistently healthy O-line, have also gone 3-1 under some questionable circumstances. After getting embarrassed by the Vikings in week 1, they destroyed the Bears in week 2, barely beat the Bucs in week 3, and the Bucs didn't have any receivers, and they barely beat the Patriots, led by a 36-year-old Brian Hoyer and a rookie Bailey Zapp. Rodgers has yet to kick into that second gear, but has been fairly consistent and reliable up to this point. I feel like the key to this game will be both teams' defenses. Giants have one of the worst rushing defenses in the NFL at this time, and the Packers aren't too far behind them. Packers also have the 3rd best passing defense, while the Giants have the 8th best passing defense. I don't know if it contains Saquon at this very moment, but I think we're going to see the closest thing to it, and the Packers get a relatively confident win in London. Falcons at Buccaneers. Result: Buccaneers are going to defeat the Falcons, and here's why. I don't think I need to get too in-depth with this prediction, but I'm going to anyways. The Falcons have gotten some solid wins thus far against teams that are currently at 500. Drake London has looked very impressive up to this point. Cordero Patterson looked great until he got put on IR, and the offensive line has been relatively solid all year. Defense has exceeded some expectations as well, including 3rd-year cornerback AJ Terrell, who is now defending wide receiver 1s and clamping them. There are 2 problems with the Falcons and their credibility as a team. Kyle Pitts is not getting the ball, and Marcus Mariota is their quarterback. There's nothing inherently wrong with Mariota, and he's absolutely not their quarterback for years to come, but he doesn't necessarily help this team win. Typically in the first half, he performs just fine, but once the game enters the 3rd quarter, he just forgets how to play pro football. The Bucs have had a plethora of issues on offense this season, but it's primarily due to injuries. They didn't have Chris Godwin or Julio Jones for a few weeks due to injury, and Mike Evans just had to defend Brady's legacy and get suspended in week 3. Offensive line has been giving Tom Brady a ton of issues on the field, as I expected they would, due to the injury suffered by Ryan Jensen, the retirement of Ali Marpet, and other injuries on that offensive line. Right now, Brady just looks to be a shell of himself at this point, which should be fully expected by most, considering he's fucking 45 years old and should probably not be playing football at this level. That said, their defense has been just fine and has still been top 10 this year. If the Bucs win this game, it'll be solely because of their defense, in my opinion. Unless Tom Brady just goes balls to the wall now that he's pulled a reverse Aaron Rodgers on his family, meaning they left him, which is honestly possible. Bears at Vikings. I unfortunately believe the Vikings will defeat the Bears, and here is why. The Bears have been a very up and down team up to this point in the season. They are currently 2-2, and they've shown their defense and their run game are both still very strong, did not regress from the previous season. In defense, they're 4th in passing, but only 32nd in rushing. That's the worst in the league. In terms of actually rushing the ball, they're 3rd in total rush yards and tied 4th in yards per carry. The most questionable part about Chicago's team has been their pass game. 2nd-year quarterback Justin Fields is struggling mightily. He has not had one game with over 200 yards passing, averaging a little over 51% completion, a passer rating of 58.7, and has not been a touchdown since week 1, when the Bears played in a fucking monsoon and he threw 2 of them. Last week he looked much more confident and comfortable throwing the ball, but Chicago's pass protection has been better than last year, but that's a very low bar to set. The Vikings have almost an exact opposite problem. Their offense is among the best in the league on paper, but their defense is quite subpar, being in the bottom 10 for both pass and rush defense. Vikings currently lead the NFC North with a 3-1 record and hold a tiebreaker over Green Bay, who are also 3-1. Everything about the offense has been as consistent as it can get, except for primetime games, which I blame Kirk Cousins for. I believe that defense is the most important part of football, but I just think that Minnesota's offense will be too much to ignore. If Jalen Johnson isn't ready to go for the Bears come Sunday, they're cooked. Lions at Patriots. I do have Lions being the Patriots, and here's why. The Lions statistically have had the best offense in all of football, despite a 1-3 record. Jared Goff, as of recording this video, is tied first in passing touchdowns and third in passing yards. That is not a mistype. Jared Goff is having a resurgence in 2022. However, they have the worst scoring defense in all of football as well, allowing more than 37 points per game. Lions have also been dealing with injuries as of late, losing DeAndre Swift for the foreseeable future, as well as Amon-Ra St. Brown. Unlike other teams in this video, I'm not going to highlight how the Patriots can win. I'm going to highlight how they're going to lose. Their quarterback is rookie Bailey Zappi, who, to his credit, did look impressive against Green Bay. Their run game is uninspiring. Their wide receiver 1 is a slightly past prime Devontae Parker. Their defense is mediocre. Bill Belichick is a Tom Brady merchant. Yes, I just said that. And they have Joe Judge and Matt Patricia in high positions of coaching. Lions should win this game and score a lot doing so, and probably let up a lot also. Texans at Jaguars. I do have the Jaguars being the Texans, and here's why. The Jaguars, similar to the Giants, have been very impressive to start the season. Most expect them to be a 2 to 3 win team, and they're already 2-2. Unlike the Giants, however, they've actually had impressive wins against solid teams, beating the Chargers by 30 in Week 3 and shutting out the Colts in Week 2. Trevor Lawrence has looked like a top 10 quarterback for the most part this season, aside from Week 4's loss to the Eagles, where he had 5 turnovers. Christian Kirk has been a legit wide receiver 1 up to this point, and the supporting cast has done their part as well. Even their defense has looked the best it's looked since 2018 when they went to the AFC title game. Trayvon Walker is almost certainly the front runner for Defensive Rookie of the Year at this stage, and has looked much more pro-ready than most expected. The Texans this year, however, remind me of the 2021 Lions, a team that will battle and consistently have close games with teams, but not necessarily win most weeks. Week 1 was a tie versus the Colts. Weeks 2 and 3 were decided by 1 score, and they almost came back from what should have been a blowout in Week 4 versus the Chargers. Rookie Dameon Pierce has been a standout for this Houston team. He is currently 8th in total rushing yards and 7th in yards per carry. I do believe that this will be a close game, but I do believe the Jaguars will get the win. Chargers at Browns. I do have the Chargers beating the Browns, and here is why. Chargers have been very shaky this season, to say the least. Justin Herbert is basically playing without a ribcage and yet still leads every quarterback in total passing yards. Keenan Allen, his #1 target, has been out since Week 1. DK Metcalf, without name recognition, aka Mike Williams, has been rather inconsistent. Austin Eckler's been pretty inconsistent, and their star-studded defense has been struggling to mesh at this very point. Joey Bosa also hurt his ball sack and will also be out for a couple months. The offense has still been relatively solid despite these struggles, and the Chargers are currently 2-2 for their troubles. Also worth noting that Brandon Staley is on Nathaniel Hackett levels of terrorism when it comes to being a head coach to a professional football organization. The Browns, however, have not been much better. They currently have arguably the best running back in the NFL, Nick Chubb.
Not the first Chubb I've seen today.
Who is 2nd in rushing yards and 2nd in rush touchdowns. Their defense has been solid, but there's a big question mark currently on the availability of Myles Garrett, who was just in a car accident. Jacoby Brissett hasn't been much to write home about, but he's been a solid game manager who is doing a decent enough job in place of known women's respecter Deshaun Watson during his suspension. Amari Cooper has been inconsistent up to this point as well as underwhelming. They're also 2-2, but if their defense didn't choke Week 2 versus the Jets, they'd be 3-1, albeit against relatively weak competition. This is Cleveland's first taste of real competition up to this point in the season. I feel like they're going to fold, and I think that the Chargers secondary is going to eat the Browns passing game alive, and their front 7 is good enough, in my opinion, to take Chubb down. Chargers win, not in a blowout, but not close either. Dolphins at Jets. I do have the Dolphins beating the Jets, and here is why. The Dolphins have been under much scrutiny as of late because of their treatment of quarterback Tua Tagovailoa. Tua suffered a concussion in the first half of Week 3 versus Buffalo, and they decided he was still good enough to play, even though he could barely stand on his own. Miami did win that game and then proceeded to embarrass their own franchise by allowing said concussed player to play on primetime versus the Bengals, where the exact same thing happened to Tua. It's unknown when or if Tua will return to the field, so until then, Miami will have to make do with veteran quarterback Teddy Bridgewater. He should be fine since he's throwing to Tyreek Hill and Jalen Waddle, because I have a small hunch that they could still easily produce, even if I was quarterback. Their defense is still stellar and should be just fine as well. The Jets got their QB back last week versus Pittsburgh as Zach Wilson returned and led his team to a comeback victory. Wilson did not look the sharpest in this game, but it was also his first game of the season, and it's also only his second year, so it's way too soon to cast judgment. The Jets running back room looks very promising with Michael Carter and Breece Hall, both solid receiving backs who can open the field with their diverse offense. Garrett Wilson has been amazing considering his quarterback for the past 3 weeks was Joe Flacco. The defense has improved from last year, ranking 13th in passing and 12th in rushing. But even with this, I do feel the Dolphins will eke out a win. With or without Tua, they're still a talented roster and have years of experience compared to the Jets under their belt. Steelers at Bills, I have the Bills defeating the Steelers, and here is why. The Steelers have officially moved on from Mitchell Trubisky as starter, and I completely disagree with the move. Not just because I'm a mega fan of the former number 2 overall pick, but because you are throwing rookie quarterback Kenny Pickett into the deep end with no flotation devices against some of the toughest teams in football, the Bills, the Buccaneers, the Dolphins, etc., with some of the shittiest pass protection in the game. As much as I love Mitch, he realistically should have been the starter, at least until the bye so he could be the scapegoat. I understand Pickett getting action and him getting experience against tough competition, but the Bills are going to tear him apart and it's not even funny. This is going to destroy his confidence, and Steelers fans are going to tear him apart because if there's anything Pennsylvania fans could tell you, that they're the nicest people on the planet. Matt Canada is also quite possibly the worst offensive mind in all of football. Seriously, Stevie Wonder could draw up a better play than Matt Canada. I don't even have to say much about Buffalo. They have arguably the best quarterback in the league in Josh Allen. They have a top 3 receiver at minimum in Stephon Diggs, one of the best defenses in the league without Micah Hyde and Tre'Davious White, and they might not even have Jordan Poyer this week, but I do still think they'll get the job done. And one of the best coaches in the game in Sean McDermott. Unless half the team gets serious injuries at once for the entire season, or they just all die, these are your front runners to get out of the AFC. It's also worth noting that the Steelers have a decent defense as well, but it suffered drastically with the absence of star linebacker TJ Watt. Even if he plays, which he won't, Buffalo will win this game easily. Seahawks at Saints, I have the Seahawks defeating the Saints, and here is why. Seattle is currently surprising the NFL world with its level of play since franchise legend and current terrorist Russell Wilson left in the offseason. Geno Smith is currently leading the league in completion percentage at 77.3, and if he's able to maintain it for the entire season, he will surpass Drew Brees for the highest single-season completion percentage. Mike Williams with name recognition, aka DK Metcalf, has been fairly consistent as wide receiver 1A, with Tyler Lockett as wide receiver 1B. Rashad Penny has been pretty inconsistent, but he just went off the week before against Detroit, who has the worst defense in football, to be fair. Seattle's defense has been bad, but their offense has been good enough to outweigh the negatives up to this point, maintaining a 2-2 record, including a win versus the Broncos, led by former quarterback Russell Wilson. New Orleans has been fairly disappointing to start the season, in my opinion. Jameis Winston has not been playing the best, but he also has 49 fractures in his back, so now they have Andy Dalton starting while Winston recovers. Michael Thomas is having a resurgence after barely playing the last 2 years, and Chris Olave is having a fantastic rookie year and is currently primed for a 1,000+ yard receiving season. Alvin Kamara has been a disappointment so far, not even sniffing the productivity he was enjoying in 2020, which might signal the end of his insane run. The defense has been the biggest blunder in my opinion. If you watch the games, you would not think that this defense was led by Cam Jordan, Marshawn Lattimore, and Tyrann Mathieu. They're 1-3, but realistically should be 0-4 if Atlanta didn't think choking massive leads was the greatest thing since sliced bread. I'm sorry for the cheap joke, Falcons fans. Should be a high-scoring affair with Seattle coming out on top. Titans at Commanders. I have the Titans beating Commanders. Here's why. After 2 weeks of stress, fantasy owners thinking he was finally done for, the Derrick Henry we've known for the last 4 years has returned for the most part. Ryan Tannehill has returned to being the ultimate game manager, being accurate as fuck, but barely throwing the ball. The AFC South is now wide open with 3 teams that are currently 2-2, including Tennessee. The defense has been great for years now, and that trend is continuing. Washington's been a dumpster fire of a team for years, if we're going to be honest. With many name changes, lackluster rosters, off-the-field distractions, etc., it always feels impossible for that team to feel like a competent organization. Carson Wentz has been average outside of week 1. Their wide receiver room is disgusting in a bad way. What in the actual fuck happened to Antonio Gibson? The dude had an insane rookie year and has just become the new James White. Terry McLaurin is currently wasting his prime on a poverty team with Wentz favoring Curtis Samuel. The Titans don't have to do much here. Halfback dive to Henry 3 out of 4 times will suffice. 49ers at Panthers. I do have the 49ers beating the Panthers, and here is why. The 49ers are currently riding a major wave of momentum after a dominant win against the reigning Super Bowl champion Rams. Their defense is showing it hasn't lost a step in the slightest. Despite their run game being the weakest it's been in years, it hasn't affected their offense much. Jimmy Garoppolo is just good enough to win games as a starter and has amazing talent to throw to Deebo Samuel and George Kittle. if they want to start throwing the ball to Kittle. I don't see any of the positives that others see in Carolina. Their quarterback is a mid. CMC's impact has been significantly dampened due to his injuries. DJ Moore fucking blows, and their defense is mediocre outside of Brian Burns. Matt Rule isn't a good coach on the NFL level as well. I don't like Kyle Shanahan either, and I believe he's one of the most overrated coaches in all of sports, but at least Shanahan has proven he can win games effectively. I say 49ers get the dubski here. Cowboys at Rams. I have the Rams beating the Cowboys, and here is why. The Rams are coming off of one of the most embarrassing losses all year, with the offense putting up 9 points, all from field goals against San Francisco. Matt Stafford up to this point isn't even a top 20 quarterback, despite being borderline top 10 last year. If you're a Cooper Kupp stan, you're probably euphoric right now because it seems he's the only person on the field that Stafford wants to throw to. Allen Robinson left Chicago to be a bigger part of an offense just to go to LA and be the exact same situation. Their run game is doomed, and their defense is not looking like a defense led by Aaron Donald and Jalen Ramsey. The only Rams defensive highlight came this past Monday when washed up Bobby Wagner attacked the fan. Dallas is an enigma right now. They're currently 3-0 with backup quarterback Cooper Rush, and he's the only Cowboys quarterback to start his career 4-0 as a starter. Surely he'll lose his spot the minute that Dak Prescott is deemed healthy enough to play, but he's carving out a nice job in the NFL for himself going forward no matter who signs him. Tony Pollard is better than Zeke, but what else is new? CeeDee Lamb is a legit wide receiver 1. Michael Gallup just returned. Trayvon Diggs is actually looking like a top 3 to 5 corner, and Micah Parsons is a monster. Despite all this praise I have for Dallas, I do feel like LA is going to pull off the win. I have a feeling they're just going to go out there at home and just demolish these guys to prove a point that they aren't anyone to fuck with. This feeling could very well be my diarrhea, but that remains to be seen. Eagles at Cardinals. I do have the Eagles beating the Cardinals, and here's why. Arizona will be Philadelphia's first real challenge this season. The thing with the Cards is that they don't seem to have this. The thing with the Cards, they don't seem like the same team that they were last year. Everything just seems off. I understand they don't have DeAndre Hopkins currently, but their offense is still good enough to not be this stagnant. Cardinals would be 1-3 if the Raiders knew how to play competent defense. Even Arizona's defense looks significantly weaker than it did last year, and their defense last year was top 10. Losing Chandler Jones and Jordan Hicks hurt this team much more defensively than I originally thought. Meanwhile, the Eagles are currently 4-0, and even though it's against non-playoff teams, they still look nasty. Jalen Hurts has emerged as a top 5 quarterback. His receiving core, AJ Brown, Devontae Smith, Dallas Goedert, whatever, has been just as good as expected, maybe even better, and the defense has been locked down. The Eagles will likely finish among the top teams in the NFC due to the weakness in their schedule, but the Eagles will win this game, not by a lot, but probably by about 7 to 10 points. Bengals at Ravens. I have the Ravens beating the Bengals, and here's why. It's a battle between the two frontrunners to win the AFC North. The reigning division champion Bengals have been finding their groove as of late. Joe Burrow is slowly breaking out of his slump. T. Higgins has taken a major leap this season. Jamar Chase has been stagnant since week 1, but should be fine as the season progresses. Joe Mixon has best game in week 4, and the offensive line is finally doing what they were paid to do. Defense has been solid, but not much different from last year. Not worse, but not better. Baltimore's lost 2 games, and in those 2 games, they didn't hold a lead for only 14 seconds of those games combined. Their defensive collapses need to be studied in universities to prevent them from ever repeating history again. Lamar Jackson is currently top 3 in passing. He is tied first in the league with 11 passing touchdowns, and is also a top 10 rusher as well. Rashad Bateman has stepped up big time, so Lamar doesn't have to exclusively throw to Mark Andrews, although it looks like Lamar is going to have to do that because Rashad Bateman has been ruled out for this game. I feel like the combination of the Ravens D and Lamar just being dominant will be enough to edge the Bengals. And finally, Raiders at Chiefs. I do have the Chiefs beating the Raiders, and here's why. The Raiders have surrounded Derek Carr with weapons and got him one of the best offensive minds in football in Josh McDaniels, just for them to be 1-3. Carr himself hasn't been the main reason, but he hasn't done much to show he's the solution either. Top 3 to 5 receiver in Devontae Adams has gone on record and said that his new offense is like learning Mandarin. Darren Waller has been a ghost all year this far. I don't even want to talk about Hunter Renfrow. Josh Jacobs is having an excellent start to the year, I cannot lie. Meanwhile, for the Chiefs, they have very much so exceeded my expectations up to this point. I thought the Chiefs were going to be a sub-500 team, but they are currently 3-1 and just beat one of the top teams in the AFC in the Bucs. Shame on me for doubting Patrick Mahomes, honestly. Yes, he's only throwing efficiently to Travis Kelce, but he's so offensively creative that he's able to create scoring opportunities for his team that you and I could never even begin to comprehend. Their defense is still one of the worst in football. I truly believe that. Juju has shown thus far that he sucks. MVS sucks too. Clyde can suck, but only when he feels like it, and their secondary is still a major cause for concern. The Raiders are currently winless in Arrowhead Stadium since 2014, and I do think that trend continues this week as well. But there you go. Those are my predictions for week 4. Let me know what you guys agree with. Let me know what you don't. Thank you guys so much for watching. If you guys are new and you want to see some more videos like this, please be sure to leave a like, subscribe to the channel if you have not already. And with that said, I will see you all in the next video. Peace out.